Hey everybody, I've got Terrell Woods with Anderson's Grain Trade Group. I probably said that wrong, but he's got his thumb on the pulse of the grain industry. So I would advise you to pay attention to everything he has to say because he's in the know. How you doing, brother? And thank you for coming on.
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me, Chris. As we were discussing, prior to this, it's been a logistical nightmare here, since about August with the river levels. We are unable to ship on the river, have been unable to ship on the river for this will be our seventh week. Um, River levels at Vicksburg, or at, I think, 3 feet right now. So we're unable to load any kind of barges at all, corn, beans, whatever. The bean crop here this year was almost a disaster. It was very close. The first 40% of the crop, we got 24 inches of rain the first week of August, which basically destroyed that 40% of the crop. Anywhere from 15% damaged beans to 50% damaged beans. Our biggest cutoff was 25% or less. If you had over 25% damage in your beans, we were having to reject the loads. We moved from that to 15% damage or less. And then now we're at 10% damage or less, which I've had my two biggest guys finished up yesterday. So we're almost completely done with harvest. Luckily for us, we're the only we're the only elevator in Northeast Louisiana that has rail access. We talked about this the last time I was on your show. We've got a 100-car unit train rail loop facility here in Delhi where I can bring a whole 100-car train in here and load it in about 12 hours. We do business with Barges, who is probably one of the largest bean crushing plants in Mexico. They crush about 94 million bushels of beans a year. They crush a train a day, 365 days a year for soy oil. We were able to strike a deal with them. If we could have 8% damage or less on our train cars, that they would take them and dump them. We sold them 11 trains in September. I've got another train sold to them in October. I've got 4 more sold to them in December. And then I've got another 4 sold to them in February, which that will get me out of the bean business. Once I load those trains in February, I will be out of beans for the year. Now, only problem with that is carrying these soybeans for that long. It's they're already a damaged crop for the most part, and beans are just a very fickle commodity. You have to be very careful in storing them. You have to watch your temperatures all the time. You have to, watch for hot spots, watch for humidity, anything like that, can ruin your bean stocks. So that's our biggest concern right now, is just being able to carry these beans, until February when we can get them loaded. The corn crop this year was subpar. We were expecting a much better corn crop than what we had. I'd say the average, across all the guys I do business with was somewhere in the 170s, 170 bushels to the acre. Typically, we're 185 to 195 bushels to the acre. Soybeans, because of all the damage issues, typically we're running anywhere from, 50 to 75 bushels. And I mean, I just had a guy finish up yesterday. He was cutting 15 bushels to the acre. The exporters are starting to open up to some of these damaged beans, where if we could ship by river, we would be able to ship some barges to the exporters at the Gulf. But, logistically, we just can't do it right now because we don't have any water to ship.
So, yeah, let me talk about that just for a second. So,
Sure.
you've had some problems growing the beans. Now we're having trouble shipping the beans. And what's the deal with the river level and how many barges? I want to say we did a show yesterday. It was like 2,000 barges that were having trouble. Is that true? That's
I
remarkable.
I don't have a actual number on that, Chris, but I would say sure. I mean, no doubt. I'll tell you, what really puts it into perspective. So when we were loading barges, I loaded 49 corn barges in July and August, before we ran out of water in the river levels. I was paying 600% of tariff for my barge freight, which was roughly 36 cents. Today, barge freight is 2,500 of tariff. So right now, it's 36 cents a bushel is what I was paying. You'd be paying about $2 a bushel to load a barge right now. And because of these low water levels, even if you can load, most times you can't load a full draft on a barge. Here, full draft for us is 14 to 16 foot draft. And, that's 80 to 85,000 bushels on a barge. We got to where we were loading 9-foot drafts, and that was, 45 to 50,000 bushels on a barge, which you're paying the same barge freight, whether it's full or not. So, it was a matter of us not running out of space, or we never would have loaded those light barges, but we had to, so we didn't run out of space. All of my elevator space was filling up, so I had to go out and load some barges just to make room in my elevators. But this year has really taken a toll on the farmer. This has been one of the most expensive crops we've ever grown in this area, with the cost of diesel going up so much. And, it was 100-degree temperatures here from, June the 1st until we got into harvest. It didn't rain a drop until we got 24 inches in 1 week at the worst time that we could have gotten it. And, since that big rain in the first week in August, we had 3/10 last week. That's the first rain we've had since. So, right now it is dry as a powder keg out there, which is good for a couple of reasons. We're able to get all of our field work done. So most of these guys are able to get their fields rode up and ready to go for next year. And, that's a good thing to get ahead on. But it is really taking a toll on the farmers this year. I had one farmer, he farms about 12,000 acres. He told me that he spent $520,000 on diesel alone just to irrigate his crop. That's not diesel to run tractors. That's not diesel to run combines. That is diesel just to irrigate his crops. So
that's remarkable. That is,
with the cost of fertilizer being outrageous, like we talked on your last time I was on with you, all that compiled this year. And then on top of that, to have a disaster like we had, and insurance for soybeans in Louisiana is not, it's going to cover some of it, Chris, but it's not going to make these guys whole. It's going to be a lot of farmers that are struggling to pull out of this one.
Do you have any predictions on what grain prices will be next year? We're eating last year's grain, I guess, now. So how is this going to equate to the end consumer? That's the main question, I guess.
I feel like the price of corn is fixing to go through the roof. Right now, corn is still pretty strong. I think right now today we're trading at about 683 for nearby corn on the board. That's really strong for this time of year. Typically once you get into harvest, when the Midwest starts harvesting and everybody starts harvesting and the pipeline starts getting full of corn, then these prices start to break. Well, we hadn't seen that yet. And the USDA has lowered the carry out in corn this year. They have lowered the yield this year. And typically the way it goes is bigger crops always get bigger and smaller crops only get smaller. So I feel like the further we go, and it's going to be, Chris, towards the end of November before we really know what kind of yields we're going to see out of the Midwest. And once we see those yields, I think they're going to be down. My company, we have 31 locations in the U.S., and we have a call every Wednesday to discuss, corn positions and what the crop looks like. And 80% of my elevators nationwide have all been singing the blues all year, that the crop just isn't there. They've had heat problems. They've had drought issues just like we have here. And the crop just is not as big. Now you have pockets in Iowa and different places that are going to have really good crops, but overall as a whole, I think the corn crop is going to be short this year. And I think that we can potentially be looking at, $7 corn for next year, which is, a great price. But on top of that, you have to take into account all the cost of your inputs, your fertilizer cost. And with the logistics on the river being so messed up, a lot of that fertilizer and stuff gets barged in here. So if we can't get the inputs to grow the crop, then we may want to grow corn and not be able to grow it.
Sure. Fertilizer is a really big problem, and it just started happening, not too long ago. It seems like it really started happening all at once, and now we're kind of starting to feel the effects of it. Next year, it could be catastrophically worse, just the fertilizer portion. And if diesel keeps doing what it's been doing, it doesn't look good. This isn't a very happy report. Do you have any good news?
Well, the good news, I guess, would be is that, for the most part, the 85% of my customers are going to be okay. They're going to pull out of this deal. They're going to be able to go again. We may just have to diversify this crop some next year, where we're typically, all corn and soybeans. You may see some milo next year. You're probably going to see more wheat than what we've seen in years past. Just because of the availability of the inputs, being able to get the seed, being able to get the fertilizer, all that is going to be tough. And, like I say, if this corn market makes a run like I think it's going to do, then everybody in the world is going to want to grow corn, and there's going to be a fight for the inputs that are out there, for the seed and for the fertilizer. And looking at this river, I've had a hunting camp on the Mississippi River since I was a little boy, and I went over there last weekend. I have never, ever seen the river this low, ever, which is scary, because everything that rains in the Ohio River Valley, it has to fill up the Ohio River Valley and flow down to the Mississippi River to get our water levels back up. Well, we've got some precipitation in the forecast. However, in the next couple of months, all that precipitation is going to be frozen. So then you're going to have to wait for it to melt. I mean, I think it could potentially be March before we could actually start seeing some, barge traffic open up on the Mississippi River, especially in our area, which that's when we're planting corn, is in March.
Right.
So hopefully it opens up sooner than that, Chris. But it's been a tough year, man. It's in 10 years that I've been in this business, this has hands down been the toughest year I've ever had to trade.
Yeah, and you said 85% of your clients will make it, but that means 15% will not.
They won't.
That's 15% less farms we get to deal with. That doesn't sound like much of a big deal, but it actually is. And we'll see what's coming. And I appreciate you coming on. What is the name of your newsletter you put out? And I'll try to make sure everybody gets it.
Well, it's the Van Trump Report, and actually, Kevin Van Trump, he is a world-renowned trader out of Kansas City, and he puts out that newsletter. And he came and did a class for us at one of our meetings, and I actually got permission to cut and paste some of his newsletter that I put out. Now, if you want to get online and subscribe to his full newsletter, because what I send out is just a little smidget of what he puts out every day, but he has got some great information. Kevin is a tremendous trader. He has done very, very well through the years in trading commodities. And, I just like to throw that insight out to my guys. It's very easy to read, and he's very to the point, on what he thinks. So, the Van Trump Report is what I send out.
All right, cool. So everybody check out the Van Trump Report. And Carol, I'll try to check back with you at the end of November when you said you'll know a little bit more, and we'll try to watch this thing, do whatever it's going to do, and try to brace for impact. And if you don't have a little extra food, it might be a good time to do so. You will probably beat the stock market. It's been the case so far. So thanks for coming on with me, brother. I'll see you in the next one.
Anytime, my friend. Good to hear from you.
Yes, sir. Later.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir.